Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this webinar. This webinar is specifically dedicated to you who are already in the middle of writing your applications to one of the business calls under the EEA and Norway grants. For Romania, the deadline is 17th of September, and for Bulgaria, the deadline is September 30th. So we are just in sort of the final run-up to these deadlines, and it's the first time that we are organizing such a webinar with more detailed information. And we did not just randomly choose the topics, but we actually conducted a feedback survey where we asked for your needs for further information. You have replied. Many of you have replied, around 135 of you, or maybe not all of you, but 135 people have replied to this survey. So we think we are working on a pretty solid base. And today, as many as around 170 participants have signed up for this webinar. And our ultimate goal is to go from maybe a state of confusion to a state of some more basic knowledge and transparency of the requirements and criteria for writing your application under our business calls. This is the program for today, the agenda for today. The webinar will be recorded and published on YouTube afterwards. So those of you who don't have time to attend the whole webinar will still have the chance to dive into specific topics that you might miss at a later stage. It will be published on our EEA and Norway Grants YouTube channel, but you will receive a link to that afterwards. The concept is as follows. The presentations will each last for 20 minutes. And then you will have, for 10 minutes, we will choose some relevant questions and try to provide the answers sort of live on air. And for those questions that are maybe more complex or more detailed, we'll provide answers in writing in a summary of the most relevant frequently asked questions in the aftermath. Good. Then you will now hear my colleagues on their, say, topic of expertise. And we start with Barbara Stepanovic, who will talk about the customer journey. Here you go, Barbara.
Thank you, Frauke. Just a second. Okay. Okay, so hello everyone and greetings from Zagreb. I'll be talking about what should be your steps before even starting your application and what are the key questions you should focus on before starting the whole process. Since this webinar is being organized for applicants from 4 countries, there will be mentioned some specifics for every country, but don't worry, everything will be thoroughly explained and key information are the same for all countries. So first thing you should ask yourself is on what type of scheme should I apply for? This depends on several factors such as size of the grant, year of establishment and size of the company. We are starting with Croatian and Greek companies because they have a possibility of a small grant scheme for SMEs. This is intended for small and middle-sized companies with smaller investments, with maximum grant size of 200,000 euros and minimum grant size of 50,000 euros. That means that whole project value should be at least approximately 100,000 euros. Also, companies applying for this scheme should be established for at least 1 year. In the individual projects scheme, we are aiming for bigger projects, and besides SMEs, large companies can also apply in this type of investments. Minimum grant size is 200,000 euros, and that means that total project value should be at least 400,000 euros. For both schemes, focus areas are green industry innovation and blue growth, and ICT for Greece. Rules for partners are the same for all countries. Any private or public entity, commercial or non-commercial, registered as legal person in donor states or your own country independent of the applicant. In Bulgaria and Romania, you have to be established for at least 3 years if you're applying for green industry innovation and blue growth, or at least for 1 year if you're applying in the focus area of ICT in Romania. You can see that minimum size of the grant is 200,000 euros, but maximum size of grant is a little bit bigger in Romania, 2 million euros. Rules for partners are the same. And the most important thing is that the partner is completely independent of the applicant. So next question that probably everybody is asking, how much money can I get? We can't give you a precise answer to this because it depends on many factors. One thing that is sure is that this program doesn't have a fixed grant rate, and it can vary from 10% to 70%, depending on the type of the state aid awarded, size of the applicant entity, profitability of the project, the general financial standing of the applicant, and other elements. You shouldn't expect maximum grant, and in our experience, average grant rate is 50%. For more information, you should check GBER, the General Block Exemption Regulation for State Aid. So first thing you should decide between these two main categories. Is your project investment type of project or R&D type of project? It is actually not likely that Innovation Norway will give you funds for investment and R&D at the same time, so choose wisely. For investment type of project, for grant rate, you should check regional maps in your country. And here in table, you can see that aid rate can vary depend on the location of the project and regional development index. For R&D projects, aid will be given to experimental development from TRL 5 to TRL 8, and bonus rate can be given to R&D collaboration. This bonus for R&D collaboration is not always given. We can sometimes evaluate that this collaboration is not even relevant, so we won't give bonus rate for this. And this is something we take really seriously, so please be careful and choose really needed partner. For both of these main categories is given SME bonus, 10% for middle-sized company and 20% for small-sized company. There is also possibility of extra rates, but please note that they are not eligible as standalone rates, and they must be connected to the regional investment rate or R&D rate. Here we have aid to SMEs for external consultancy and for participation in fairs. This aid for consultancy is for external consultancy, legal consultancy, or technical consultancy, or something similar. but not, for example, for project preparation consultancy and for project management consultancy. Then we have aid for environmental protection. This is something for going beyond EU standards in environmental protection, for example. Also, please note that transport and energy production are not eligible. You can check GBER, and this is based for our business program, and you will see that this is not included. For more on this topic about state aids, you will be introduced to you. It will be introduced to you by Magnar. Next question you probably are asking yourself: is my project idea eligible? Here we have something for focus area of green industry innovation. This is a cross-sectoral by nature, and it will offer opportunities for a wide range of enterprises. This could involve a development and commercialization of new or improved green products and services, and a more environmentally friendly production process, or a green organizational innovation. This gives the possibility for companies to improve their competitiveness through reduced energy, water, and oil consumption, better utilization of raw materials, and increased productivity. Our program wants to encourage modernizing of the industry and innovation and greening of business in sectors such as food industry, wood industry, waste management, and so on. Here you can find some interesting examples from previous programming periods, such as integration state-of-the-art technology into the current process flow in furniture production, change in production process while modernizing the cement factory, and investment in new optical sorting equipment for recycling of plastic waste and PET bottles. Blue growth is focus area only for Croatia, Greece, and Romania, and in these countries this program can support development of new solutions within the marine and maritime sectors. We would like to encourage modernizing of fishing boats and ferries, investments and development of coastal and marine tourism, innovative technologies for the water supply, including desalination in the islands, solutions of reducing marine litter, and particularly plastic debris in the oceans and seas, and better utilization of discards from fisheries, and development of businesses based on bioeconomy. In this area, we will support innovation, but not investments in boats and ships and purchasing of new fleets or production facilities, or investments in production of energy, offshore wind or wave energy. ICT is focus area only for Greece and Romania. And ICT solutions and tools are horizontal business opportunities with high innovation potential and possible green effect. The program targets more use of innovative solution for business development with ICT. We will include the opportunity for ICT enterprises to develop innovative ICT solution for industrial processes that are new to the company, or product services solutions applicable for many areas that are new to the market. Here we have some interesting examples, like digitalization of existing production line applying Industry 4.0 in the food packaging industry, or development of a new learning software engine that is based on innovative artificial learning engine. And to conclude, so if you now know the answers after all these fundamental questions, you're ready for starting application process and next part of our webinar, assessment criteria and methodology, that will be held by Annalise, Program Director in Croatia and Greece. Thank you for your attention and good luck with your applications. And if you have any questions, it will be now answered.
Yes, thank you very much. dear Barbara. That was an excellent, very dense presentation.
Thank you,
and I can also say that, of course, many aspects of this kind of overview presentation will be taken up again by the next presentations that we will have today. So don't worry if things were a little bit fast. We still have the question and answer channel that you can use all the time, and you will see some issues recurring. So, Barbara, one of the questions that were asked was, which is the deadline for Greece, for the business call in Greece?
Currently, business call in Greece will be open, and we don't have the exact deadline for it. But the good news is that you have a lot of time to prepare yourself based on this webinar and all the information you will receive for other countries.
Very good. So you are the Greek participants are the ones that have most of the time and can prepare the best at the current point in time. Then we had another question from Tommy. And he was asking, could one project consist of different state aid categories, or could one project be financed by different state aid categories? And I think your presentation already gave the answer to that. And the answer is yes, correct?
Yes, but you have to choose between the type of investment you are having, and you can choose between regional investment aid or R&D aid, and then you can have extra rates and bonus rates.
That's correct. Then, and that will also be mentioned under the presentation about state aid, and also touched upon in the presentation on the expected outcomes, actually. Yeah, then I think the other questions are not are more relevant for the subsequent presentations. Or is there any other? Yes, Jasna is asking if we could have email contact for later questions, and the answer is, Barbara, would you like to answer this?
Yes, it is cro.innovation@innovationnorway.no, and you can all this information is on our website. So for all programs, every program has a general email address, so you should definitely check our website.
That's correct. So each country, so to say, each of our 4 countries has an own support desk email, and you can address all your questions to this support desk, which will not do anything else but answer these questions.
Yes, or refer all to the questions are being answered. Maybe not so quickly, because we receive a lot of questions, but you will receive your answers. Don't worry.
Or we will point you to the relevant source where you can find the information if it's already published.
Yes.
Then Sutiris is asking if the presentations will be shared in the aftermath.
Yes, as you, Frauke, mentioned, the presentations will be on YouTube. So you should, again, regularly check our website for more information about this event and for other future events.
Yes. And then here's the question, if we can send the email address that we just mentioned through the chat. And of course, we could do that. And we will do that in the course of this webinar. I think one of our colleagues who doesn't have to present or chair the meeting will help here with the specific email addresses, right?
But when you're asking for email address, please state from what country are you coming. Jasna, I think this is Croatian name, so this is from Croatia, and Sotiris, I think it's maybe from Greece, but please state it. Thank you.
Yes, Very good. Then there is another question whether one application can include investment and R&D activities, both in one project. Barbara, you touched upon the issue.
Well, application can include it, but it is really not likely that Innovation Norway will give funds for investment and for R&D. So you can choose between these two types of aids.
Yes, in very rare cases, because we will get back to this topic. One reason we can already mention here that is that the project duration is normally up to 2 years around typically. And this is the reason why we, for example, first development activity and then an investment activity that would be subsequent activities building upon each other and building on the success of the other would include an additional risk, and that is one reason why this is really rarely granted by Innovation Norway. Yes, and we go back to other reasons. Then we have another question here. Is it possible for the individual activities to be in different categories of... sorry, we have already answered this question, and the answer is yes. For one individual activity under a project, it can be in one category of state aid, and then especially when it is another one, for example, of those optional or additional categories like aid for consultancies, it could then be in another category. But in general, your project will have either the investment or as a regional aid, or it will choose the research and development Article 25 of the GBER as a sort of basis category, and then there might be some additional categories.
Yes.
Okay. We have a number of legal questions and questions related to state aid, so I propose that we take them under the Magna's presentation. So at the moment, I don't see more questions. The other colleagues who have seen questions that are still.
There was Emilia asked if it's the applicant or the evaluation committee that determines the amount of the grant.
Yes, ultimately, sorry, Barbara, of course, this is your call.
Well, you can choose the size of the grant, but at the end, the credit committee decides on what is your final size of the grant. As I said, it has many factors, but of course you can evaluate it correctly, like we will evaluate if you will provide us with all correct information and so on. Your wish will be similar to our decision if we have correct information to evaluate this type of grant.
Yes, so the ultimate decision on the grant rate will be taken by the selection committee of Innovation Norway, and so the typical case is that your project application will be adjusted, or the grant initially applied for will be adjusted in some way based on state aid criteria, based on financial analysis.
Yes.
Internal rate of return.
As I said, the average grant rate is approximately 50%, so you can have picture about it. So will be a meeting held in Zagreb on October 18th. I don't know what is there. We don't have anything planned. Can you please contact us directly or specify your question?
And then, Barbara, there's another one regarding the evaluation process. What's the expected time frame typically to
just
get an idea?
Yeah. So we are expecting that this time frame will take up to 6 months. But if we receive many applications, this can take more time. But we will do our best to be around 6 months to evaluate all things, and you will have like maybe more precise answers about your application for 5 to 6 months, so you will know, don't worry. Yes.
And of course, the better the quality of the application, the shorter the process of assessment. So you can also contribute to a swift time frame.
Yes.
Good. Any other questions at this point? We would have time for one or two. There was one question regarding a biogas plant in Bulgaria. Let me see. By an anonymous participant, whether it is eligible to apply for the installment of a biogas plant for wastewater treatment for Bulgaria by a large entity. What we can say is that as it's also written in our call text, energy production is not eligible as a project aim. So this is at the outset, even though I do not know the real context in this question here, but it sounds like this would not be an eligible project activity. Okay. Do we have more questions on the first presentation? Then, if not, maybe we can already switch to Anneliese's presentation on the criteria and on the assessment criteria and the methodology. And I think Henrik will take the steering here.
Yes. Thank you all for your questions, and good luck again with your applications.
Excellent, thank you very much. And please, everyone in the audience, you can keep your questions coming, and if you find the time, we'll address them, even if they come a bit later. For now, I'll give the word to Anneliese. Please, we're sharing your screen, so whenever you're ready.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Can you hear me well now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes, then I will share my slides with you. So I will talk about project assessment criteria and methodology. The document that I'm referring to is available on the program website. It is always published together with a call for proposals. This document is a generic assessment grid for all the EEA and Norway Grants business programs operated by Innovation Norway. And we strongly recommend you to take a look at this document and to go through it in detail. There are also some additional text, hints and annotations in this document that will lead you to maybe the frequently asked questions where you can find more information, or to the glossary of terms in order to explain some expressions that you might not be well aware of. So this, I will not go through all the details, just give you a few hints and point out some important aspects. So the project assessment is divided into 4 steps. On our program website, you will find a lot of templates, and these templates I prepare in order to help you to prepare a good application. And we strongly recommend you to use the application process as capacity building process in your company, because if you're going to prepare and implement an innovative project, you will need to go through all these steps that is required in order to submit an application under the business programs as well. So the first 2 steps are the administrative and the eligibility check, and this is a fact-based check, and we do not really read through the applications or all the documents, but we check the facts. Then we move on. For those that pass the first two administrative and eligibility check, we will move on to a complete and full and in detail technical and financial assessment of the project applications, where we truly read through the application and all the supporting documents in order to see if this is a project we would like to finance. And for those projects that are passing the technical and financial assessment, then we will continue with the fourth step, which is the selection and decision making. I will say a little bit more about each step in the coming presentations. Please observe that this is a business development program. This means that the assessment criteria we are using is set in order to achieve certain aspects of the business development, and the most important thing is to increase the competitiveness of the company from the beneficiary state. So let's start. This is step 1 and step 2. The administrative check, where we use a methodology called yes and no. So as I said, this is the fact-based check. So the first thing we are checking is that the application form is actually filled in correctly and that it is complete. We check that all the fields or sections are filled in, and usually they are, but please make sure that the content in the application form is short, to the point and concise. We are not looking for a lot of general information, but just be concrete so that we really understand the project that you are applying for, that you would like to have financed. If the application form is not complete, it will be rejected. And if the application form is filled in another language than English, it will also be rejected. However, when it comes to the mandatory documents, if the application form is complete and correct, then we will check all the mandatory documents. And here we are not so bureaucratic. We try to help the applicant to actually have a good and complete application. So we will contact the applicant, and the applicant will be given 10 business days to actually submit eventual missing documentation that is based on a mistake, or that maybe you have 2 documents that you are allowed to submit later according to the guidelines, as you will see in the application form. But if we don't receive all the documents we need within those 10 days, then the application will most probably be rejected. Then we move on to check that the applicant, the company from the beneficiary state, is eligible. The methodology here is also yes and no. And in the call for proposals under item 1.1, usually you will find the criteria for an eligible applicant. And since this is a business development program, it is of course important that it is an for-profit entity. This is the only type of companies that are eligible under the business calls. And please also observe that we have a requirement that the applicant should have been in operation for at least 3 years at the time of the deadline for the application. This is for the main scheme. Or if you are an SME and applying under the small grant scheme, we require at least 1 year of operation. This is of course to show us that you have some clients, you have been established in the market, you are on the right path, you are earning some money. Another important thing is that there is a template on our website where you have to declare that you are not a company in financial difficulties. In this template, you will also see the definition of what is a company in difficulties. And if you are in difficulties, we are not allowed to give you state aid or public funds in order to develop further your business. We have had a few cases where we have received declarations that you are not in difficulties, but during our financial assessment, we see that you actually are, your company are, and then we cannot finance your project. And of course, we have zero corruption and no irregularities. We are concerned about ethical guidelines, etc. This applies for EEA and Norway Grants in general, and also for Innovation Norway's clients. So you have to sign declaration that you have clean criminal and tax record in the company applying for funds, as well as the legal or the person signing on behalf of the company. So at the stage of application, this is only self-declarations, but in case Innovation Norway will finance your project, then you have to ask for certificates from the competent authority in your country. So again, if there is a no to some of these criteria, this will disqualify your application. Partner is mandatory to have partner in the business project, but it is strongly encouraged because we believe it gives value added to both the applicant and the partner. Also in the call for proposals under the same Article 1.1, you will find the criteria for who will be eligible partners for your call for proposals in your respective beneficiary state. It is like this: if the call is financed by Norway grants, it will be a company or an entity from Norway that is the only eligible partner, together with the companies or entities from the beneficiary state. If the call for proposals is financed by EEA grants, then also companies, entities from Iceland and Liechtenstein and Norway could be partners together with partners from beneficiary state. It is not very important to have many partners. It will not give added value or added points. It can become very complex to administer the project, so 1 or 2 partners is the best solutions normally. But of course, we are checking that the partner actually will contribute with some value added and with that they have the competence that they are supposed to bring in the table in the project. So there is no need to find a partner only for us to be able to tick off that you have a partner. It has to be a real contribution to the applicant's project. And when you submit the application, we need a draft partnership agreement to show that you have been discussing this project together and that you have a plan on how you will share the roles and responsibilities, and also what will be the remuneration for the partner. And please note that even though you have a partner, we have one project and it is the applicant that is responsible for the project, including the co-financing of the contribution from partners. We recommend you to look at the frequently asked questions, where we have several questions and answers about this topic. Then, of course, we are checking the project. This is very, very important, as we have to make sure that the project idea is within one of the focus areas that is included in the respective call that you are applying for. So the focus areas was mentioned by my colleague previously, may vary from country to country, so check the respective call carefully. There are also minimum and maximum grant amounts defined in the call. This is really a yes and no criteria. If you apply for a higher grant amount than the maximum allowed mentioned in the call, it will be rejected. And the same goes if you apply for too little, and let's say you apply for 20,000 euros, which is below the minimum grant amount, then your application will also be rejected. This is a mistake that you can easily avoid, so please pay attention. And of course, in all the call for proposals, there is a deadline mentioned for the cost eligibility. Make sure that your project will be finalized within the relevant deadline mentioned. If you have applied for other public sources for the same project, then you need to inform us, because it's we don't want to risk that we are financing project activities that you have already received public funds from another an agency, or that we are in risk of doing so. So the best thing is to make sure that when you apply for a grant under the business programs, this is the only public source that you will have for your project. This makes it easier to organize or to implement the project. If not, Innovation Norway will have to deal with other public agency, and this is quite complex. And of course, we want to finance projects that is really in line with national and regional policies and strategies. And you all know that it should not be harmful for the environment, or not respecting policies and legislations, etc. And one important aspect is also that you should not start the project before you submit the application to Innovation Norway. Activities should not have started. If the project is ongoing, it will most likely be rejected. So non-compliance with any of these criteria will or could disqualify your application. So if when we have finalized the step 1 and 2, we will hopefully have a big pile of projects that have passed the test, eligibility and administrative check, and a few projects maybe that did not pass the test, but all of you will be informed in writing by Innovation Norway whether or not your application has been declared eligible or non-eligible. For all those projects that are eligible, we continue with a very detailed technical and financial assessment. And in this step 3, we are using scoring methodology. We give points from 0 to 6 for each of the criteria, 16 criteria that is mentioned in this document. And we also have put weights on this different group of criteria in order to show you what is the most important aspects when we assess your application. Group of criteria that we are looking at are the project relevance for the respective call. As you will see, we have put 30% weighting on this, so this is the most important aspect, that the project is actually in line with what we want to achieve in the business program, namely increased competitiveness for the company from the beneficiary state, and it is relevant and within the focus area that is mentioned in the call. And of course, will contribute to the expected outcomes that will be explained later in this webinar. But please make sure that you explain clearly what challenge or problem the project are expected to solve for you. And we also look carefully at the viability, technical viability and feasibility of the project. In case Innovation Norway decide to give you a grant, do you have all the permits you need? Are there any legal obstacles in order for you to implement the project? And these issues will be looked carefully at. So make sure that the project is mature and ready to start in case you receive a grant. The project, we are looking for innovative projects, of course, but innovation can be in can come in many forms. It can be Innovation Norway on the enterprise level, for instance, if you have a project where you are investing in a modern technology in order to increase your capacity, diversify your product range, or maybe to change your production process. This will be technology existing on the market, but it is new for your company. And then we have innovation on the enterprise level, which is sufficient in that case. On the other hand, if you have a research and development project, then we will need to have innovation at sector level, internationally or in Europe. So there is a difference, and there are also more questions and answers in the frequently asked questions about this. And of course, the fourth criteria mentioned here is that we are supposed to finance projects that would not have been implemented without the grant. So if you have decided to implement the project with or without the grant, there is no need to apply for a grant because we will not finance this type of projects. If it is mandatory because there is a legislation maybe, and you have to implement these actions, then we will not finance it. So pay attention to these details in the call text as well. The next group of criteria that we have is the applicant. So if we have said yes to the first group of criteria that the project is within the scope of the call and it looks like it will contribute to the objective, then we are really digging into the details of the applicant entity, the company from the beneficiary state. We want to make sure that you have the necessary resources, technically, financially, and the human resources to actually implement this project while you at the same time are running your ordinary business. It can be quite demanding, that's why we are paying careful attention to this. We do not want the project to give you financially troubles, for instance, or to get into bankruptcy even. That's why we are really paying attention to these criteria. We are going through your financial accounts for the last 3 years. We are calculating financial indicators. We are looking at your capital base, your profitability, expenses, etc. And we want to assess if we believe that you are a business entity that will be able to be successful. And when you are preparing the budget, we ask you to use common sense and be realistic. Use amounts that you have checked in the market or prices that you have checked in the market so that the budget is as realistic as possible. And if you have an R&D project, it is also important that you are not overestimating the number of hours in order to get more funds, because you really need to make sure that it is those hours that you expect that you need in order to implement the project. This is a common mistake, that the budget is very much overestimated. And of course, if you have a new product or service to the market, or you are increasing your capacity, or you have a new product, it is important to include in your business plan that you have checked the market and that you really believe that you will be successful, and that project will increase your turnover and profitability within a reasonable time after project implementation. And it is mandatory to submit the cost-benefit analysis. There is a template for this on the website, and this is mandatory for investment projects as well as for R&D projects, because R&D projects are supposed to bring the product or service as close to the market, ready to be commercialized in the next phase. That's why we need to show and need to see that it will be profitable for you. So these two groups of criteria are the most important aspects when we assess the applications. Then, of course, there are also some other criteria that are important, like good business practice. We would like to support companies that are paying attention to ethical guidelines, that are not harming the environment in their operations, and they adhere to good business practice in general, and this might be a go or no go in a few cases. So pay attention that we will assess this part as well. It is also possible for Innovation Norway to ask for an integrity due diligence test or a document in a few cases if we really believe that we would like to dig into the details. And of course, the project risk is in all projects, so pay attention to this, go through them and have a mitigation plan for what you will do in case they should arise. And also the project risk is linked with the profitability of the project, so Innovation Norway will also look into this. Sustainability of the project after implementation. Well, this is a business development program, and if you invest your capital in the project, we believe that you also trust that it will be profitable and possible for you to sustain the project result after implementation. So this is normally not a big issue. Then we have the project partnerships, project cooperation. We have put 15% weighting on this. As said, it is not mandatory to have a partner, but it is actually one of the overall objectives of the EEA and Norway grants. So we will encourage a partnership project because we believe it is good for the beneficiary states and for the donor states to establish better and closer business relations in the long run. And this is exactly what we are looking for, partnerships that will continue after the project is implemented as well. And these partnerships could be in many different ways. It could be a research institute that will give competence or expertise to your project. It could be that you develop a solution together. Maybe you have complementary products to the same clients' markets. You just have to find a cooperative advantage over the competition and be transparent and discuss the project together in order to have a win-win situation for both entities participating in the project cooperation, or maybe you have 3 partners as well. All right, then at the end we have the cross-cutting issues, 10% weighting, and this refers to the project. So when you are implementing the project, we would like you to respect good business practices, etc. And also, if the project is resulting in new jobs, that is of course a socio-economic impact that we would very much like to see in the projects. For those projects that are passing this detailed financial and technical assessment, it will be presented to our decision makers as projects that are possible to finance. So the result of the assessment will be a ranked list of projects. Projects will be business development projects contributing to increased competitiveness for the applicant entity in the beneficiary state. We will share this list with the Financial Mechanism Office in Brussels, the Secretariat of the Donor States, and also with the national program partners in the beneficiary states and the national focal point in the beneficiary states. So they will see the list and they can give comments, but the decisions are made by Innovation Norway's decision-making committee in Oslo. So Innovation Norway is operating these business programs as an independent entity without any intermediary agency in the beneficiary states. But we would like to cooperate and build the capacity together with the national entities in the beneficiary states as well. So if the decision-making committee in Oslo say yes, then the project contract will be issued and sent to the project promoters electronically, and you will also sign the contract electronically. And from there, we hope that we have turned most stones in the project assessment phase so that we will have a smooth implementation of the project and reaching the expected outputs and outcomes. So thank you very much and good luck with the project application preparation.
Thank you so much, Annelise. Again, for a very comprehensive and detailed presentation. In the meantime, another couple of frequently asked questions have come up. Let's start with a fairly easy one. Jasna asks if for the business program in Croatia, if there are any official documents to be submitted, certificates issued by the authorities in Croatia, if they have to be translated or if it can be in the national language, and because it then will be read by our colleagues who speak the local language.
Yeah, this applies for all the countries, not only for Croatia. The certificates, like a company certificate and the financial accounts issued by national authorities, they can be submitted in the national language.
Very good. So that makes it easy for the applicant, I should think. Then another question is by an anonymous user or participant, which TRL, which technology readiness level is required at the time of applying, and what level of TRL is required at the end of the project implementation in our business programs, Annelise?
This will vary, of course, and our colleague, stated expert, will go into this in the next presentation, I'm sure. But as we say, this is experimental development, meaning that the TRL level we are looking at is between 5 and 8. So, but we have seen that our projects have been in a TRL level 7 to 8, or maybe 5 to 8. This depends on the type of a project, but in the range 5, 6 it should be in order to fit well into our programs.
Yes, so the message is that we are very close to market with our business programs. We want to see results in the short period of implementation. That's our goal. Then also another question, is it necessary to justify the costs and activities foreseen in the project for each of the state aid categories overall for the project, or does it have to be also at the level of activities? What would you say?
So in the detailed activity, it's a detailed activity-based budget. There's a template on the website and there will be a presentation about this later on. But yes, you have to be as specific as possible in the budget. We need to understand what type of activity you are aiming at, because there might be different grant rates for different type of activities. So be as precise and specific as possible, and of course you need to justify it, need to be realistic estimates in the budget. But we will also ask for clarifications, of course, if we are not able to understand exactly what you are aiming at.
Exactly. So of course, when we see on our way, when our experts in state aid see that one category for a specific activity is not applicable or has been it has been categorized in a wrong way, we will adjust that. It will not be sort of a kill factor for your presentation.
No, we will adjust, but it is important that we have one project. So there has to be one project with a start date and end date, and one specific project output and outcome. And all the activities in the budget need to be needed in order to implement this project. It should not be a wish list with different type of activities that is not relevant for the project. Then it will be deleted from Innovation Oversight.
Exactly. The next presentation will also go a little bit into this. Very good. Do we see more frequently asked questions that are easily to be replied to? We have one question on internal and external consultancy from a question coming by Anna Maria. Annelies, and I also think you easily can reply to this. Regarding eligible expenses, external consultancy is eligible, but you mentioned that consulting services for project preparation and consulting for project management is not eligible. We know that consulting for project preparation is not eligible, but the consulting for project management, as long as it is external consultancy, is eligible, right? Asks Anna Maria.
Yes, it is right, but first of all, the consultant that prepares the application cannot automatically be used as a consultant for the management of the project. The applicant really need to justify that there is a need for an external project management, and if there is a need, we might accept it if it is reasonable cost, and then it will be put into the project contract as a condition that you need to procure these services after the grant has been or after the project has been approved by Innovation normally. But we really encourage companies to do the project management themselves if they can, but of course this will vary from project to project and application to application, and depending on the complexity and type of project. So it can be eligible, yes, but pay attention, there are some requirements.
Yes, and of course it should have also been stated in the application. So
Absolutely.
If it's not included in the budget, you can afterwards you cannot subcontract your project management costs to a project consultant. It has to be right from the start. You have to state that you are, that there is a need. Very good. Do I see more FAQs? Yes. So Laura asks, do we need to present any technical documents on application stage, at the stage of application, such as building permits, offers, or other types of likely documents for procurements, for example?
I would say no. First of all, you have a procurement plan. So you need to include in the procurement plan the procurement you need to do in your project. But in the business plan or in the application, you need to confirm that you have all the necessary permits and licenses that are needed in order to start the project. This is an important aspect in the assessment, that it is ready, that you're not going to spend 2 years in order to obtain a building permit or whatever it is that you need. And we will ask for it during the assessment or as a part of the contracting phase if we believe it is necessary for us to see them, to know them. And of course, we need some technical aspects in the business plan in order to understand the stage, the maturity, what you're going to do. Yeah.
Okay. So now we have to go to the next presentation. Other FAQs will be asked or summarized later. And the next presenter is actually myself. So then let me see if I can get control. I will share my presentation with you. Is this working?
Yeah, it's working.
Good. So my presentation is about the expected outcomes, outputs, and so on, the notorious. They seem both very complex and quite boring. I hope to give you a basic understanding why they are indeed important for the success of both your project application and the project itself. First of all, the main idea with these project outcomes, outputs, indicators are that we want to know what you are doing and how that contributes to our goals. The indicators is the form that we have chosen to be able to determine if your idea contributes to our goals. And these goals have been ultimately defined at a very high level of governments, politicians who say they want to put money into increased value creation and sustainable growth in certain countries. And then these goals are then converted at the level of a program into a program-specific overarching outcome. In our case of the business programs, it is increased competitiveness of enterprises in Bulgaria, Croatia, Romania, Greece. Again, at the level of Innovation Norway, we have then converted this into another level, more tangible. What does it mean? What do we see our projects contributing to? The projects that we finance, we would like to see contributing at least to an annual growth in turnover and an annual growth in net operational profit for those who receive financing. This is the minimum outcome that we want to see in the long run or in the mid run for our projects that we finance. Then, of course, usually also these are not within the real control of the applicant or of the project coordinator. So we need also to define some deliverables for projects that we think will contribute to all the goals that we have and outcomes that we have defined. And for the business programs, this will be the output indicators like innovative technologies, processes, solutions that are either developed, which are research and development projects, or applied, which are usually, at least for the green industry innovation focus area, that are investment projects. These are sort of then at the main delivery level, the output indicators. And then again, what does that mean at the level of activity? It means that all the activities that are eligible, that we think are relevant in a project, they need to directly contribute to these outputs, to this main deliverable. So there is a sort of a guiding thread from the very bottom of the project at the level of where you are working up to hopefully up to the goals defined by politicians. And the instrument chosen for making that visible are project outcomes and outputs. So, and this very nice caricature here illustrates that often it is not working like this, but someone is doing something, and then hopefully it gives a very positive impact. And this is exactly the reason why in this period here, in this program period, we are working with the outcomes and outputs indicators. So, and also in addition, these are not only guiding threads, but so they help sort of guiding us and guiding you and letting us see the big picture. And they also sort of are the reason why Christmas wish lists are not eligible, because everything needs to fit together, everything needs to contribute to the next level of goals. Here it is also maybe useful and important to underline or define two terms that we use in the EEA and Norway grants, and that are taken from our EEA and Norway grants regulations for this program period. And the regulations are a big book of rules that we need to follow when we operate your programs. They are publicly accessible if you are interested on the webpage of the Financial Mechanisms Office. And two important terms here are the definition of project. A project is an economically indivisible series of works fulfilling a precise technical function and with clearly identifiable aims, you could also say outcomes and outputs, related to the program under which it falls. A project may include one or more sub-projects, but that doesn't sort of annul the rule that I just defined. It has to be one indivisible, economically indivisible series of works with one or two main goals for a project. And in order to know what the eligible expenditures under a project are, and if your sort of expenditures will be eligible, you have to think that they must be used for the sole purpose of achieving the objectives of the project and its expected outcomes in a manner consistent with the principles of economy, efficiency, and effectiveness. So if you follow the definitions of these two terms, you will already be able to assess yourself if activities under your project will be eligible in principle, because they need to contribute to the outputs, to the outcomes, and ultimately also to the overarching objectives of our call. And they must not be in excess, or they must not be like Christmas wish list. They must be contributing directly. They must be necessary to achieve the goal. So let's look at these indicators in our business programs. And for all the focus areas in our business programs, we have two mandatory indicators, two must-have. All the projects need to contribute to increase the annual turnover, and they also need to be likely to increase net operational profit of your beneficiary company. Both need to be fulfilled. For the green industry innovation component, you also, in addition, have to show that your project will lead to some green outcome. We have explicitly stated a number of outcomes listed here that could be chosen. You could also list your own green outcome and then convert it to the CO2 emissions equivalents, and we have provided guidelines how to do that in our Excel table. So don't worry if you have a green outcome that your project will contribute to that is not listed in this list. You can, with our guidelines, convert it to the CO2 emissions equivalents, and that will help you again then to be in the game. We also have output indicators. So output indicators meaning basically the main delivery of your project, or maybe also it could give you an idea of the main activity. And as we have already outlined, this will usually be either an investment activity or a research and development activity. So investments financed by regional aid, Article 13 and 14 of the General Block Exemption Regulation, or Article 25 for the research and development activities, typically the experimental development, also to be found in the GBER. So again, then at the level of your activities, again, these activities must contribute directly to achieving these that you have stated you will want to achieve, the outputs, outcomes, and ultimately the objective. Well, this is a lot of indicators. Let's have a look at how this could be visualized. You see, this can be visualized in some kind of pyramid. When we put the overall objective of the business program on top, that is increased value creation and sustainable growth in general, for the business programs across all the beneficiary countries. And then we have for all our 4 countries that we're talking about here, the overarching outcome that we have chosen is increased competitiveness of enterprises. We think that this contributes to increased value creation and sustainable growth. And your projects will also somehow contribute to this. And they then need to contribute to both estimated growth in net operational profit, which I'm circulating here, as well as estimated growth in turnover, and one of the green indicators if you are within the green industry innovation component. And then you have to choose at least one of these here that your project needs to directly deliver on. And then again, project activities are eligible if they directly contribute basically to the outputs, to the outcomes, and then to the overarching objectives. So there has to be a clear line of necessity, so to say. For the green indicators, I haven't put all of them here now, but I have put the most important ones in here. But you know that the list is bigger. Let me give you an example of a project that delivered an application in the last round of calls that was not eligible. That was, so the idea was to green a hospital. A hospital provided a project application. It was looking to upgrade its waste treatment and ventilation facilities. And of course, this is a nice activities. It contributes then to a green effect, so to say. But this would not then have increased the turnover of this hospital that they upgraded their waste treatment facilities. It would only saved costs and then led to a higher profit, but not an increase in turnover. And that's why this project was not eligible. Another example also, let's say that, let's say also a hospital wanted to upgrade its equipment or the uniforms of the employees and the furniture, make the furniture out of sustainable material. This would unfortunately not at all contribute to an increase in turnover. It would be a nice Christmas wish list, but it will not help us reaching the goals that politicians have defined for our programs. That's why we would not accept this. And if you want to see how this sort of is reflected then in the visualization, it would be here at the level of outcomes, where you have to tick off both growth in turnover and net operational profit, and then one green indicator in order to be eligible under the Green Industry Innovation. So there it failed. Other example, investing into a new lacquering line. There was a factory producing furniture. They had a lacquering line for furniture, and it was a little bit outdated, and the lacquering was not environmentally friendly. So they decided to invest in a new lacquering line, which then led to both energy saving for this factory. It also led to an environmentally friendly an effect of not polluting, for example, the environment. And it also ultimately opened up for further clients and bigger sales. So it ticked off all the three outcomes for green industry innovation, and that's why they got funding. If we have a short look at the ICT focus area, which is relevant for Romania. In the ICT, we would typically see research and development projects mainly. And they would then not have to bring in any green effect, but they would only have to contribute to the outcome, estimated growth in net operational profit, and then growth in turnover. So this should be a little bit easier. And then it usually would then, what we would like to see is develop a new technology, process, or solution within the area of IT, and then usually applying Article 25 of the GBER. One example where a project was partially eligible was a project applied to that included both a development and investment component. And the applicant wanted to first produce or develop a product, let's say a chip or sensor, and then produce these products, buy a machine to produce them, both in one project. And the main reason why this project or the component about buying the machine was not funded was that the ICT focus area wants to look at digitalization projects, like Anneliese said, investment into digitalization, turning old production lines into digitalized ones, and look at research and development, a high level of innovation. It does not support purchasing production lines or production machines used in manufacturing. This is then again for the green industry innovation focus area. So this component about purchasing a machine was not applicable, but the rest was eligible under this application. So let's have a look at where it failed. It basically failed in here because the notion of applying ICT technology, processes, and solution under the ICT component does not mean that you can apply regional 8, Article 13 and 14. That only is possible under the Green Industry Innovation component. No heavy investments into heavy machineries. I think I'm almost at the end of my presentation. Let's have a look. I jump over one slide, but I think this one here might also be important for you. So just to underline that working and familiarizing yourself with outcomes and outputs and indicators, it will not stop after the project application, because you will encounter it, of course, in the call texts and in the applications form in this very dedicated expected outcomes Excel sheet. But you will also then meet outcomes and outputs again at the signing of the grant contract. The things you put in there, the values put in there, the mandatory ones, they will be a part of your grant contract, and we will follow up on them. We want to see them in the aftermath. We want you also ultimately, when it comes towards the end of your project implementation, we want you to fill in the results as far as possible. Of course, for the outcomes, they will usually show after the end of your project implementation, and that is why we will not ask you for real results, but for your expectations on, for example, increase in turnover, increase in net operational profit. We will not punish you either if this is then in the end less percentage points than you have guessed or expected at the time of your application. At the time of your application, we will assess whether it is likely that your project will actually score in net operational profit and turnover. So we will assess the likelihood of your estimations, not more. You will not be punished for not achieving the exact results that you forecast. Okay, I think that was the core. And now I would like to open for questions on these outcomes and indicators.
Frauke, I know that you can't see the questions, so I'll try to help you.
Thank you.
First of all, we have a question from Tommy. We would like to develop a service that would lower energy consumption of the client, the one who will buy the service, but not of the company who would develop the service and apply for Norway grant. Is such project eligible?
So if the goal is a research and development or an experimental development of a product that at the time when it is sold to the client will have a green effect for the client, then yes, such a project would be eligible, even though at the time of applying you would not be able to exactly put numbers on the net operational profit, on the green effect, because it depends on the number of clients who use it. But when we read your application, we would see that we would be able to assess the likelihood of achieving such a green result, yes, for your clients. Okay. Under the research and development project.
Yeah, and then we have a question from T. Hammer, and that's perhaps a little bit general question. How many percentage of the budget can be used for marketing of the new product?
In principle, the indicator on commercialization, it's a little bit misleading. We would, in principle, not like you to market it a lot. And especially because we sometimes see that then Norwegian partners are used as sort of the long arm to market your product in the Norwegian market. So this is not the intention, but to a limited degree, you could, it may be necessary for bringing your product to the market to participate in fairs, and it's difficult to say the percentage, but it would be a rather small amount. Not sure if you have any numbers in your mind, Magnar, or if you want to specify a bit more.
Well, I think that the main thing is that okay, we would accept participation in perhaps 1 or 2 relevant fairs, but we will not finance marketing costs in general, because that's a problem also from a state aid point of view.
Yes. Okay.
And yes, we have a question from Maya. Can we include investment, new innovation green processes, plus Industry 4.0 for that new technology, R&D development in Bulgaria? Both will have a green effect and will increase turnover and profit.
Yes, if it is, well, if it leads also to green effects, then you could include that under the green industry innovation component, I would say, but not under the ICT, because it includes, if I understood correctly, investment into machinery. Does it?
Yeah, it's both investment in new innovation green processes, but plus Industry 4.0 for that new technology, R&D development of the new technology. So it will be then what you already touched upon, the mix between investments and R&D.
Yes, yes. And that is, of course, you can try, and if you have really good arguments, this might go through, especially if it is doable within the scope, the time frame of the project. But as I already said, we will look very closely on the case. Based on the information given here, it's difficult to give a definite answer.
Yes, and then we have a question from Christina. Is a project for a green car sharing e-vehicle innovation services eligible, where an innovation software application is developed and tested together with Norwegian partner and e-vehicles are bought?
It depends on the, this would be then experimental development, and usually this state aid article requires, has really specific requirements and criteria for what activities would be relevant and classified as experimental development. Usually the development of an app does not fall under these criteria, is not sufficiently experimental development as such to be then eligible. But again, to reply to this just based on this sentence here.
Okay, then we have a question from Corina. Is a project eligible if its implementation leads to a reduction of personnel in the company due to automation of the process?
Job creation is one of the indicators that we also look at. However, in our business programs, job creation, if you can point to a positive effect, it is also under sort of supporting your project idea, and it is nice. However, what is here in the center of our attention is actually the increase in profit and turnover, which means that if you really score well in these two aspects, it will be at least not ineligible that you then reduce personnel. I can say in principle.
Yeah, I think we take one more question, and that is from Stefan. If we have a project that involves buying equipments and implementing ICT solutions, how will we categorize it?
Categorize it in terms of state aid? How?
That's probably what's meant, yes.
Yes. I think maybe would you like to answer this, Magnar?
Yeah, I think that would then be categorized as a regional investment. It would be an investment project because it would not qualify as research and development.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you very much, Frauke. I think I'll just skip in here and say this is now your time to shine, Magnar, for the next part. So please feel free to share your presentation.
Okay, can you see it?
Yep, we can see your desktop, or PowerPoint rather.
Good. We have, of course, already touched upon some of the state aid issues because it's such an important part of the total package. But I will now use a few minutes to explain then the main provisions that we will use in our programs and how we will apply them. And I will also try to clarify some common misunderstandings as regards state aid. First of all, we have to establish whether the applicant is subject to state aid rules or not. And the short and easy answer in our programs is that all applicants are subject to state aid rules, because sometimes we get arguments from potential applicants. They say that, oh no, we are non-profit and so on, but that doesn't matter, because if you are doing activities within in the market and subject to competition, then you are subject also to state aid. One other important aspect is then the SME definition, because as already stated, the main target group of our programs, that's the SMEs. Of course, we are not excluding large companies, but the SMEs is the main target group. And then, of course, we have to establish whether the company is an SME or not. And that is also important as regards the possible grant rate to award to the project. And actually, it's then three main criteria that we have to assess when we see whether a company is an SME or not. First of all, it's the staff headcount, less than 250. And then we have the turnover and the balance. And you will have to always have to fulfill the staff headcount criteria, and you have to fulfill one of the criteria on turnover and the balance. And of course, some companies, they are in a position that they are growing, and then the rule is that they will retain the status provided that no change in the ceilings according to 2 consequences a year. So the SME definition is important, especially as regards then establishing the possible grant rate for the project. But of course, the devil is in the details, and the devil as regards the SME definition is ownership, because you have small companies, but many of them have then bigger owners, large owners, or perhaps they are a part of an economic group with other companies, and then we will have to count then the total number of staff, and then the total amount of turnover and balance to establish whether the company actually is an SME or not. So we will sometimes we face the situation that a very small company actually is not an SME because they have too big owners. And it's also then a possible problem with venture capital, because some venture capital entities, they have ownership in a large number of companies, and in certain situations we have to add on then the figures from other companies. So the SME definition is rather complicated, and sometimes we then reach conclusions that are not very favorable for the applicants. They believe that they are an SME, but the assessment shows that they are actually not. And then we have then also a question, it's perhaps not directly linked to state aid, but it is really important in our programs, and that is, who is the beneficiary of the project? Because, as already stated, the main purpose is to develop the companies in the beneficiary states. So it's really important that it's the applicant, the company in the beneficiary state, that is in the driver's seat of the project. Because sometimes we see what we sometimes call hostage taking by partners, that the project is really mostly benefiting the partners, but they need to find a company in the beneficiary state to be eligible for funding. So, but the role of the applicant is rather minor, and that we will not accept. Okay, then we apply, as already said, the block exemption regulation, the GBER, and I will now go into the main provisions of GBER that are relevant for our programs. The block exemption regulation has existed for many years, but the last version of it is from 2014, but was amended in 2017 to cover some areas not that important for our programs, so I will not go into them. But of course, the purpose of the GBER is that to make a simplified procedure to avoid notifications of state aid and to set general rules on state aid to be applicable in all EU member states and also in the EFTA EEA states, such as Norway. So we apply exactly the same state aid rules in Norway as you do in the European Union. So, and GBER is applicable for almost all types of aid, but you will find some excluded areas. And in general, that's export aid, and that's why I said that we will have limitations on the possibility to finance what could be considered to be export aid. That, for instance, then we have seen projects with the Norwegian partners that the role of the Norwegian partner is actually to find customers in Norway for the applicant. And that we will not accept, because that's not an eligible activity. And of course, we have strict limitations on fisheries and agriculture, because they are subject to specific other rules that we do not apply in our programs. But it's still possible to finance then activities within R&D. Well, mainly R&D for our program, but also risk financing, training, employment. That's not that relevant for our call for proposals. And of course, also the coal sector is excluded from the GBER. We have also some other areas that are excluded from receiving regional aid, but that I will come back to. This is very important, and it was already mentioned that a project cannot be started before you apply for aid, because then it will lose its so-called incentive effect. So if we find out that the partner already has started, then it is not possible for us to finance it. So that is really important, and the crucial point for SMEs is that you have to have sent the application. After you have sent the application, you can start some preparation, of course on your own risk, because the first date of eligibility of cost will be when you get the project contract from Innovation Norway. For large companies, it's even stricter than this condition on incentive effect. Another point that perhaps sometimes surprise applicants is then the condition on proportionality, and that is that we should not give more aid to a project than that's necessary. And then we will enter into the discussion of grant rates, because you have the indications in the state aid rules, but that's only the maximum grant rates allowed. And we will not always use the maximum grant rate, because if we see from the financial assessment of the project that the company has a very strong economic situation, or the project is very profitable, then we could use that to reduce the grant rate below the maximum allowed by the state aid rules, because that's because of the condition of proportionality, and that aid should be limited to the minimum. So that is the basic conditions that we will start out with. And of course, you also sometimes get the question whether you could combine financing from our programs with other types of financing. But that is usually not allowed, because that's called accumulation between two different schemes for one action project. And that can only happen if the total support is under the maximum grant rate set in GBER. So if you have received the maximum from another program, then you can't top that with financing from our program, because that would be illegal state aid. And it's not possible to accumulate with the EU programs, because that's set out in the rules for participation, for instance, in the Horizon 2020, that you can't combine it with other programs to get a higher total grant rate for the same projects. The GBER is very broad, and we mainly use the provisions on regional aid to SMEs, aid for research, development, innovation, to some extent training aid, but not that much, and then aid for environmental protection. I'll go a little bit into the different categories and start with the regional aid. Of course, the regional aid is then aid with the purpose of development of the most disadvantaged areas by supporting investment and job creation in a sustainable context. And regional investment aid will then be based on the regional maps approved for each country. So that's why you saw from the table presented by Barbara that the possible grant rates, they differ from country to country. And of course, in exceptional cases, it's also possible with operating aid under the regional aid provisions, but we don't use that in our programs. We are not financing operating aid to companies. As I said, some areas are excluded from regional aid. The transport sector and infrastructure is excluded. So for the transport sector is then only possible with R&D activities, and then projects that would then improve the environment. But you can't get regional aid for instance, buying a boat or buying a bus for commercial transport and so on. That is not possible. And also in the field of energy is rather limited. Energy generation, distribution and infrastructure is not eligible for regional aid. And that's because the energy sector has its own legal provisions in the GBER. We have also have limitations on shipbuilding because it has for many years been an overcapacity on shipbuilding within the European Union, so it's limited what you can finance within shipbuilding. Again, we will have to be then a research and development innovation project. Textile sector is partly excluded from regional aid. And then, as I said, we have very much limitations on agriculture and fisheries. So what's called primary agricultural production is excluded. But then other types of projects related to the agricultural sector could be possible. For instance, in research and development. And also investment in fisheries and aquaculture. This means that it's not possible for our program to finance investments in a boat for fisheries or production facilities within aquaculture. That is not possible. But we could finance projects related to research, innovation, development within the sector, but limited. So what does it mean when we talk about initial investments? We actually four categories that are eligible for regional aid. First, setting up a new establishment. That is to set up something completely new. The second category is extension of capacity of an existing establishment. That would then typically be to, if you have 2 production lines, to increase it to 3 or 4 or something like that. Diversification of the output. That would be that you have a certain category of products that you produce, but that you would like to diversify your production into something related to it, but not exactly the same. And then you have the fourth category, that's fundamental change in the overall production process. That would typically be a green industry innovation project that you would like to improve the production process of your company. But then be aware, as already said, that the business criteria in the program will require that the change will have also to contribute to increased turnover and profitability. So it's not sufficient only to have a project that will improve the environmental conditions of your production. This is possible to illustrate. I will not spend much time of that because it's kind of self-explaining how it would look if you set up a new establishment, and the extension. Diversification could be a car producer will also produce motorbikes. And then you see the last one, the fundamental change, then be a radical improvement, modernization of the production process. That could be eligible for funding. And we also have some other conditions for investment aid. The state aid rules say that investments financed must be maintained in the area for 5 years for large enterprises and 3 years for the small. Actually, in our programs, we also require 5 years for projects within SMEs. You will have to keep the investment, so you can't get funding from us and then 3 or 4 years down the road sell the whole thing and pocket the profit. That is not possible. And of course, then you will always have to come up with co-financing on contribution, but then how much depends on the regional maps established. Then we have the category aid to SMEs, and that category is very relevant for our programs because that could be external consultants. And we have a lot of external consultants as partners in our projects, and they will then typically be financed under the provision consultancy in favor of SMEs. But you have to draw a line between what is a partner and what will be only a supplier, because we will not accept as a partner a consultant that will just deliver something that will be on the shelf that you can buy from many other consultants. There will need to be a rather specific service related to the project in question. So that is important. And we also have had a lot of discussions on the calculation of the payment to consultants, because the program rules are that the cost of the consultants will have to be established and calculated in the same way as the personal cost of the applicant. So it's not possible for the consultants to charge their usual consultancy fee with the profit. They will have to calculate their contribution based on the actual personal costs in their company. Another important category already mentioned is, of course, the research, development and innovation. That applied to all sectors. And if you look at the total set of the research that could be financed under Article 25, we start with fundamental research, and then it's in the industrial research, and then experimental development. But as already mentioned, we are implementing business programs, not research programs. So we will not finance fundamental research. We will not finance industrial research. We will finance experimental development. And as already mentioned, that would be typically from TRL 5 to TRL 8, because TRL 9 is actually not considered to be research and development, because that's the last fine tuning of a project, of a product before it's ready then for commercialization. So experimental development it is, and this is a rather lengthy definition of experimental development, but the core of it is, of course, that you have to have reached a stage then beyond fundamental research, industrial research. We are financing project closer to the market, because also of the criteria on increased turnover and profitability. We need to see projects that are close to the market. That's the reasoning behind only financing experimental development. And of course, it's also because we need to have some kind of border between research programs and business programs, and that is kind of the border is between the industrial research and experimental development. But it's not easy always to then be able to find out whether the activities are within experimental development or not. And the definitions of this is based on the so-called Frascati manual developed by OECD. There is possible to find a detailed information about how to define research and development activities. And for ICT projects, it's even more difficult sometimes. But then the main criteria to be considered to be research and development is that it's novel, new knowledge. It's creative, it's not a regular product development. It has to be some kind of uncertainties related to it. It needs to be a systematic solution of a problem, and it needs to be transferable and reproducible. So just regular product development based on what you have will often be considered not to qualify as research and development. And it was also already mentioned some then projects related to software development, they will often not qualify. You can't just based on known technology and known methodology develop an app that would not qualify as research and development. So there are really some challenges, gray areas, of course, between the different categories, and also we have the question that you will have to address if you have a partner. That is the ownership to the results created by the project. If it's a share result of the applicant and the partner, then perhaps it will be needed with two different appraisals by Innovation Norway, because both parties will be subject to state aid, and then of course also the partner will have to contribute with co-financing. And the question of collaboration bonus was mentioned earlier today, and collaboration bonus is only possible if the partners share the results of the project. You can't get a collaboration bonus if you have a Norwegian partner that will only contribute with contractual research. That is important to note. Collaboration bonus is only possible when you have the shared results. And then we have many projects with pilots, and the question whether pilots are eligible for funding under research and development. Yes, they are, but if then the developed pilot will then, after the implementation of the project, be used commercially and it will then create revenue, then the assessment could be that only the depreciation costs of the development of the pilot would be eligible for funding. And that's perhaps a little bit surprising for some, because they think that, oh, we will call this a pilot and then we will get everything financed. But that is not the case, because we will look at the potential for revenue creation of using this pilot after the implementation of the project. And as already mentioned, ICT software is a challenge related to research and development. We also use the state aid category on environment and energy. But as already mentioned and also showed by examples, we will not finance a project that will only be improvement from the environment or perhaps energy efficiency point of view, because that would only save costs, not create revenues. And that is the main objective of the business program, to improve the ability to create both revenue and profitability. But we will use the environment provisions of GBER if relevant for the project, and that could be early adaptation to EU standards or going beyond EU standards. It could be energy efficiency measures, and the other categories listed there, we are rarely using them. Perhaps we could use waste recycling and reutilization, but we are not using, for instance, the provision on renewable energy, because as stated in our call for proposals, energy production is not the purpose of the business programs, because again we are then creating some kind of border between the business programs and the energy programs implemented in many of the beneficiary states. For instance, in Romania, where Innovation Norway is the operator also of our energy program. So on energy, we will mainly finance research and development projects, develop solutions related to, for instance, renewable energy, but we will not finance investments in, for instance, solar panels or or other types of production facilities for renewable energy. Okay, I think I've used more or less my time there, so I'll stop. So if any questions, we'll be happy to answer them.
That's excellent. Thank you very much, Magnar. Now, due to time, if you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll or the Q&A, and we'll try to answer them. But for the sake of time, we're now going to move on to our next speaker, which is Mihai. Please, I'm sending you live right now.
Thank you.
Okay, we got both you and your presentation. Now we see the back end, not the presentation.
Okay.
There we are. Excellent.
Okay. I think I need to adjust here a bit. Sorry. Yes. Okay. Oh, no, that's not working. No, sorry, I have a bottleneck here. Yeah, this should work. Okay. Yeah, so thank you for taking the time to complete the application and be present at this webinar. From the survey, it has resulted that the business plan is among the top 3 documents that are important, and that is very much true. It will offer the opportunity to further elaborate on the project activities and results, objectives, and of course, the main aim. How to start? In my time spent working with projects, I got the chance to look at some business plans for over 10 years now. These business plans have accompanied the business applications and all the projects submitted over a series of 3 programming periods. And I've noticed that when designing the business plan, you both need a color and also a clear description of project activities. In the slides to follow, I would like to present some of the key aspects that require your business value proposition to be highlighted to its fullest potential. Continue with the needs of your business described into actually the business plan. In this respect, under the executive summary, the company business plan should at least minimally include key factors related to the critical success of the project implementation. I've noticed that introducing the founders and the people that are behind the business, the opportunity which the project activity is targeting for the business as such, and also it's important to outline shortly what is the risk and reward. Minimally, you need to at least address what problems does your project solve. And also what is important is to highlight how you plan to actually solve that respective project. In historically speaking, it's important to demonstrate that the company that is planning to actually develop the respective project is in tune with what has been achieved to date. Not at all not being important is also to take a look at the financing. And here is important to briefly say what are the sources of the financing that you plan to bring to the project as a co-financing. And of course, in addition, you should at least mention what are the future revenues sources that should be made or are going to be made available for the company. I've noticed that there is a quote by Albert Einstein saying that try not to become a man of success, but rather try to become a value. A description of the value of the company should be reflected under the section covering the presentation of the company. I noticed that the presentation and the value that it brings through the main activities of the company, these activities should be relevant for the project, and of course should be the ones that are being targeted as a main activity. If there are also in this section, you should focus on including a description of the group, if you are part of a group, or if there are engagements in this respect should be reflected under this section. We come to cross several type of businesses that have board of directors, but there are some situations where you need to at least mention how they are going to be involved in the company, if this is the case, or how is the decision being taken within the company. If there is a sole owner, which takes all the decision of the responsibility, how is this going to be spread within the management group? It's important to focus the presentation on facts about the company and include in this respect a description, if applicable, of certain certifications that you have obtained so far. What is the range of services or products that are approved by or provided by your manufacturing company should also be included in this section, in case there is we are talking about a company that actually manufacture products or offer services in this respect. The current situation. This section presents the internal resources and external conditions in order to be able to implement and exploit the results for which the project is being made. Start with the status of the company, key resources and core activities, the SWOT analysis, and also the products. Describe how you're going to position and what is your market position in this respect. What is important here to outline is to pinpoint what is the local market that you're planning to or you're present on, what is the regional market that or national, or for that respect international one. Describe this, also include some percentages to point out who are your main suppliers when it comes to customer segments and relationships. Also, distribution channels are going to be targeted in this area as well. Of course, competitors and conditions is important to position yourself in how is going to improve your situation further on. An analysis of the main challenges and needs, describing the opportunities and threats. Sustainability, of course, is clear. It's to describe how the company safeguards the good business practice and the project's impacts on society and the environment. And not the least, it's the economical and business surroundings. It's about key figures that are going to be relevant and are relevant for the company. Under this section, you should also take a note and understand if your partner has the relevant competencies to be inserted here. If so, then this section will apply for them as well. A more important or another important section is about the long-term and the short-term strategy. It is about how the development and how do you see the company being developed in 10 years and how you are going to see it, your targets being achieved in the next couple of years. In this respect is define the company trend over this time period, short-term and long-term. Include a description over your turnover and if there is a case to creation of jobs. The industries and your customers, describe them, how they are going to achieve or target them, and how are they going to influence you or anticipate that they're going to influence you. Developing the product and market expansion, your company infrastructure development and use of technology. These elements should be included in this long-term strategy or short-term strategy. The project is something that this section is the crucial part of the business plan, among which the business plan, the development of the business plan should focus on presenting a clear distinction between aim of the project, the objectives used to achieve the aim, and activities carried out for each objective, in case you have multiple objectives and their results. In that sense, the project objective, which is the outcome, you need to formulate a clear project objective. And in this respect, there are some guiding questions that will help you. Why is the project needed? They include a clear correspondence between the project description and the need of funding. What needs of our problems are solved and for what target groups? The project description is a section that will give you the opportunity to present the project activities and results achieved over each implemented activity. Mention which activities will be subcontracted, and which will be done in-house. It's important to note if you plan to outsource services, as they also need to be correlated with the procurement plan. Describe the experience of the company and of the team in implementing similar projects. Here, underline the key important persons that will get involved in delivering the project activities. This person should have a clear role and relevant to the task. Of course, we are talking about the background of the project and the background of the project need. How has the project become a need in the company? For example, after further increase of sales or need of expanding the production for green industry innovation projects. Under the technical solution, you should start by describing your technical solution. For example, the research and development and the innovation aspect. Here we are describing the process, product, services in terms of technology readiness level, as it was mentioned before. Each activity needs to be carried out to take the product from one level to another, need to be documented and to show what is the research and development activities carried out in this respect. For an investment project, for example, you need to correlate the need of an equipment with the activity listed, include a description of the planned equipment and why is it relevant. Also, what is important to document when you come to the budget is to include offers. Those offers from suppliers for which equipment should serve as the basis of the budget will demonstrate that you have actual prices from the market. Under this section, you've related to the partner role. There were some clear wording related to the partner. The applicant, we could start by saying that the applicant is fully responsible for the projects to own the fund operator. It includes securing also the co-financing of the project. However, the responsibility of the partner towards the applicant is and should be defined in the partnership agreement. The section of the partner should also describe the experience, what is their share of the project budget, what are their project activities going to be involved in. The project budget it needs to include the total expenses of the project, including the total cost and the remuneration of the partner. As your partner can expect to cost coverage for actual salary costs, social contribution, as well as overhead costs that can be included and described in the budget. Still in the sense of financial, the partner could actually decide, either the state partner or the project partner, donor state partner or the project partner could decide to contribute financially. This should be clearly stated in the application form and also describing the detailed activity budget and also in the partnership agreement. It is important to mention once more, it was already mentioned, that if the partner benefits from the results of the project, for instance, shared IPR or investment, the partner will also be subject to state aid assessment. And in a case where only the promoter benefits from the project and the partner contribution is competence and or technology based on a contract, the partner will invoice the project promoter for the contribution. Then the co-financing will be ensured by the project promoter. In the sense of activities, in general, the project partner is expected to provide either competence, knowledge, technology, or a similar type of contribution. This contribution must be essential for the successful implementation of the project. The contribution of the partner is, if it is defined as standard and could be provided by several companies, then it might be subject to procurement regulation. What is important to also highlight is the fact that a simple provision of a product or a service does not qualify as project partnership. The project partner contribution cannot be merely an off-the-shelf service. Next section, it's related to the summary, the financial main findings. Under this section in the business plan, please note that there is only a need for the summary of the main findings related to the cost-benefit analysis and also related to the effect on profitability for the company. The extensive financial information must be included in the mandatory attachment, And also in this respect, you have templates available in under the essential reading section. Going through the summary, you need to highlight the project cost and revenues, the profit and loss, the historical dates up to and then the forecast, the cash flow of the project, impact on turnover and profitability. And also it is important to think or analyze if you have large discrepancies between your financing account. The relationship between the project profitability and risk is important to the grant, and the proper has to understand the proper allocation of the grant. Describe how the costs are adapted to the income. For instance, if you have a small turnover of 100,000 euros, but then you are making an application for a grant for over 500,000, this aspect needs to be correlated and adapted to the reality. More details related to the budget will be further presented by my colleague. The green element. The green element of the project is it's a section that it's a must for green industry innovation projects. There are some focus areas like ICT, welfare technology, or blue growth, where this section is optional. Here we need to understand to provide a summary of the expected environmental benefits as a result of carrying out the project. As it was mentioned, under the outcome indicators, you will note that there is a conversion table. Please use the emission factors in order to calculate the CO2 emissions that are listed there. Further important section is the market potential, the feasibility and the sustainability, and also the competition. Here we are discussing about the findings of the market potential, connection to the product service to the market that will be focused in your project. What is the market size and market growth, competition and profitability, and consumer and product service type. You should forecast total opportunity in terms of numbers of customers and revenue potential, and estimate your market share. The third important section is the one that relates to legal environment. Details if any project specifics require approval or permits and are required, and details that expect to be obtained within a certain time period. For instance, if you have an investment that is pending on the future approval of a permit, then they should be detailed. Details if any project specific are required in this certain timeline of the project implementation. Also, still on the legal environment, you should outline the licenses and permits, and if the case, the special regulation, and of ownership of patents or IPR, distribution between partners before and after the project implementation. Finally, the two main sections related to sustainability and the relisting effect should be described in the sense for sustainability, describe the sustainability in relation to the results produced, and how will the company be able to develop further on the basing themselves on these results. Under the relisting effect, you should describe why the project can't be implemented without funding from the program. Why is the funding necessary to get the project implemented, and how would it release the project? What roles has the grant in connection with the company? What advantages will this project produce for the company? Also, will the project accelerate or generate significant benefits? Such items or such reply to such questions should be documented under the releasing effect. In short, these are my core sections that need to be reflected under the business plan. And thank you for presenting or for being present here.
Thank you so much, Mihai. This was a very good and detailed presentation. We haven't received any questions by now, but maybe I could ask you a question. You who has seen a lot of business plans, where are the which are the sections or which are the top 2 mistakes or challenges you see from looking at all these business plans from applicants? Where do you see traps most likely?
When you
or
go
where
to
do you often have to ask for additional information?
I noted that in many cases we need to correlate clearly the activities and also describe them clearly in the sense of what you plan to obtain as a result.
Sorry, what do you mean by correlating the activities? Do you mean to show clearly how they contribute to reaching the output and the outcomes, or what would you say?
That's one of the factors to show clearly how they are going to contribute and to the outcomes, and how are going to be how are they going to help you in the company.
I see. Yes, and how do they and maybe that they are really necessary. Could that be that they are really necessary to reaching the for the project success? Maybe that's
that is, of course, it's another item to consider. Also, this is also correlated with the human resources that you're going to get involved, and if the respective human resources are required to implement the project.
Yes. Okay. Anything else?
Good luck.
Okay, but maybe I could also ask you if this has not been replied to yet. There was somebody asking usually what determines whether the partner needs to come up with own financing. Are you able to reply to this question? I saw it earlier. I can't find it right now, but.
It's not a must. The partner, as long as in the partnership agreement, the partner and the promoter agree to how the project is going to be carried out and to which activities they are going to contribute. They can either opt to put the entire co-financing on the project promoter if the project promoter agrees in this respect, or the partner can come with its own co-financing and bring and ease up the work on the project and the cash flow.
Yes, so if you have a project where a partner from Norway, Iceland, Liechtenstein becomes a partner in the sense that they share the risk and also potential benefits, that would be a case where they also then share some or provide some own financing to the project, and they would then become a separate subject to state aid as a recipient of state aid. So that would be a case where they would also come up with own financing.
I would say that in case we have a partner that would like to share the risk, then that respective partner clearly believes in the project promoter idea to submit the project. Indeed, it is true that if they would like to share the results in the sense that the partner is contributing with a certain activity, mainly research and development is in the topic. If they want to own the results in that respect, then they will fall into a state aid position. So we will need to carry out a separate assessment in that respect.
Yes. Thanks a lot. I also see that since Magnar has fallen a bit short of questions, and we have no specific questions, as I can see, regarding the business plan right now, which speaks very much in favor of your presentation. I would like to take some questions to Magnar to fill the remaining 7 minutes that we have, if that's okay with you, Magnar. You touched upon the issue of energy production that we have not included in our sort of program portfolio with the business programs. And Laura has asked the question whether it is eligible to implement a waste management biogas plant that reuses waste and reduces the amount of natural gas used by the production of the enterprise. The biogas is for self-usage and not for sale, and it enhances the business effects. From the point of view of the indicator person, I could say that here it is not obvious that it would contribute to an increase in turnover. So from that point of view, it would not be eligible. And I guess that Magna, from the Magna point of view, one could say we have excluded energy production from our business calls. So that's what that would, from that perspective, not be eligible. Is that correct, Magna?
Yes, I think you answered that perfectly, because as you said, it will not contribute to the business indicators.
Yes. And that then we have the question above from by Ralica. Oh, Laura, by the way, you have asked this question. Should you be a registered company in Romania, you could, of course, then apply with us, for example, under the energy program, the renewable energy call that you can also find on our website. Then we have a question by Ralica. Will a project for waste processing and turning them through a specific equipment into industrial steam be funded? Or is the steam considered energy? Magna, what do you say about this?
Well, I'm not sure if I fully understand the question, but it would probably be then considered to be then energy, because what would be the usage of the steam?
Exactly, that would be a question. We haven't received more information about that, so it's a bit difficult to reply to that. But if you use the steam for further, for example, reducing your own energy costs, then it would be considered as energy.
But I can see now that Ralica has clarified this just 1 minute ago, that the steam is sold to another factory and is paid by them. So the steam is a product. Yeah. So, but still, I'm not an expert on steam. So, what would be then the usage of this company? Would it then be for heating or? So I think that we'll have to have a bilateral dialogue with Ralica on this project idea.
Yes. I cannot see if there were any updates in the last minutes. My last question I can see here is 1 hour ago by Laura. So if anyone else has updated questions in their window, we could have 1 or 2 more.
I think it was one question about de minimis. Because
yes,
we in the call for proposal, we say that in exceptional cases we could award the de minimis aid. So I'll just underline that we will only use de minimis if we can't find another possible provision, if we can't find a provision in GBER. So one specific example where we have used in some cases de minimis is for consultancies for large companies, because consultancies for SMEs, of course, can only be awarded to SMEs. So if then a consultancy contribution to a project of a large company is considered to be essential for the project, then we could use de minimis. But we will never use de minimis just to boost the grant rate.
Good. And then there was another question related to legal services. When are legal services eligible, or costs for legal services eligible in the budget, Magna? Under which circumstances?
Of course, legal services could be eligible if then the service provided is necessary for the implementation of the project, and we have also accepted, for instance, legal legal services for then help with procurement and so on. But of course, it will then have to be considered case by case what kind of legal services are necessary for the implementation of the actual project.
Yeah, could also be, for example, help for IPR.
Exactly.
Yes, intellectual property rights that may result from your projects could also be another example.
Yeah.
Good. Should we then switch to the next presentation by Carleen, which will be a very interesting and very technical one. So please all wake up and mobilize your energy once more for our wonderful Carleen on the detailed activity budget.
Okay, Carleen, you are sent live. I think you are on mute, Carleen. If you could unmute yourself.
Yeah, of course.
There we are.
Greetings from Innovation Norway office in Sofia. We have rather sunny and clear sky here, so it's a perfect time for a webinar. I have the privilege to present today the detailed activity budget, which coming out from the survey turns out to be one of the topics that is most to be discussed with our applicants. So I'll start my presentation with just briefly presenting what is the structure and how the detailed activity budget is actually positioned in the whole package of documents. One of my first comments and recommendations to the applicants would be to very carefully observe the linkage between the detailed activity budget, which here could be called DIB, with the other documents. So it's really important to see the same information in the detailed activity budget in terms of figures and the other documents that are included in the application project, in the application. So it's for sure the linkage should be very much observed with the business plan, with the application, and of course with the financial statements and other documents. For example, when we are talking of, for example, presenting an investment and including it into the detailed budget, we should very much like to see like an attachment to the whole application, like an annex, the price offer for this investment. Also be very much prepared to receive questions from our side on different costs, and don't take it like that we are not counting on your clarity on the budget, but just be prepared to challenge you on also on the forecast that are included in the detailed activity budget. So what is the structure of the detailed this Excel file? So we'll start with detailed budget, which is in fact was the core sheet in this Excel file before some amendments took place earlier this year, because our previous applicants know that initially we had only this sheet in the file. So then we added also balance sheet, profit and loss sheet, cash flow sheet, and project cost and revenues. Both the idea of including all this additional information in the Excel file is to also have reference between the different information sources that we use when we are applying our methodology in assessing and evaluating the project proposals. What I mean is actually when we are talking about the detailed budget, and it was also mentioned by Mihai, it is important to know what is the amount of the total budget and to be able to compare it to the whole operational profits of the company. We usually had some like figures thrown in the air that the company is expecting, let's say 10 or 20% increase in the revenues. But when we have this increase shown in a table, then it's a bit different to advocate about this increase and to really show how this increase will at the end take place in real. Before starting filling the detailed budget, you should definitely read, and also it is important for the business plan, because there are certain sections that are really very well presented in the guideline for detailed budget and financial forecast. It's really important to read this file, which is part of the essential reading of each of our costs. So when you're starting to fill the detailed budget, please read before that this additional information. So when we're starting filling the Excel file, the first thing that you will encounter, this is actually this box, which we are advising you to read and then to delete. But please don't forget it, because sometimes when you start to fill the budget, it's usually not in the same day that you're completing it. So you can very easily forget those advices. So please remember them, and because usually it takes also, for example, 1 month in filling this budget by creating the links with the other documents in the application. So don't forget this. I will only focus on a few of them, because most of them are really very technical advices. But for example, the second point, which is describing the modification, this is when you're applying, this is not relevant for you. So always say no, it's not a modification of the project budget. Some other points that should be mentioned. This is in the budget, when on this first sheet of the detailed activity budget, there is a state aid categories in each of the activities. So when you scroll down the budget on this first page, you will see that there are different activities. So under each of them, there is a drop-down menu which will come here under the select, and you can select one of the state aid regimes which is relevant. But you should be very careful in describing the state aid regime also in the project application and in the business plan. And then simply here, you should select only the state aid regimes which is available and which is eligible for the certain code, because be careful here, you can have also other state aid regimes which could not be eligible for your certain code, or could not be very well related with the objectives of your project. So this is one point. Another thing and it is also the structure of the budget, it is also showing that it is absolutely possible to combine different state aid regimes in one project proposal, but you should be very clear what is the linkage. And something which is also very relevant to be said now when we are talking about the detailed budget is that we are not only checking the eligibility of the costs that are listed here, but also what is the logic behind them. So when we have a cost or a budget line which is eligible, it doesn't mean that it would be approved if it is not proven what is the linkage with the other costs or with the whole bunch of activities that are included in the project. Another thing that you should know here is that the amounts that are listed for example, for investments, they should be they should be listed here without the VAT, because if the company is not registered under the VAT, then the cost here should be listed without the VAT. So not the whole price offer, the price at the price offer should be mentioned here, but only the price without the VAT. Another thing which we had also a lot of questions also today for how the financial relation between the promoter and the partner should be stated. If it comes to the project, but to the budget, here we have one drop-down menu. It is also described here under point 6. That you should select, for example, if you have only one project, you should select P1, which means that those costs would be related to the project partner. But the project budget is not showing who is contributing for the co-financing of this partnership engagement. So basically, if you have the idea that the partner will contribute and you're not going to invoice him or pay under the invoice the whole amount and then get only what is covered by the grant from under the program, and if the partner is going to contribute, then it should be described also in the other documents, for example, the business plan and the project application, that the partner is also will be contributing to the budget of the project. But pay attention that if the partner is going to contribute, then the partner would be also subject of a separate state aid review on whether it is eligible to receive state aid. Some very short recommendation when you're filling this first page of the detailed budget. For example, don't use lump sums. This is something which is we have very often in our application. So pay attention that there is a very clear formula how the hourly rates should be calculated in terms of contribution, for example, for the project management. It is if it is going to be organized internally, or for example, R&D remunerations. So don't include, for example, only, let's say, 20,000 euro like lump sum with no explanation. So you have a column for the number of hours. You can explain also in the other documents how you're reaching this amount for the hourly rates. For management and publicity costs, please apply the same grant rate as the investment costs. So basically, we have a separate section in the budget where you can include those costs, but when we are doing the evaluation and then approving the grant, we are usually associating these costs to the investment cost. So use the same grant rate that you are applying for the investment. For the most of our costs, there are no limitation of the percentage, for example, for the management or publicity or the legal services or audit services compared to the total budget of the project. But please be realistic, and you cannot expect, for example, to have 20% out of the whole budget for project management, for example. Of course, we will very carefully investigate when we have a complicated project with a lot of activities. Then it's obvious that the management is an important part of this project, but still we'll look very carefully on the logic behind each of these costs. And also, for example, if you have a project with, let's say, purchasing only one piece of equipment and you have like 10% from management, it's definitely not going to work, and it's not looking very realistic on such kind of project. Always require that offers from the suppliers and subcontractors and upload them for annexes. We would like to see the prices that are in the offers. We would like to see them in the project, in the budget, not some other costs that have no background. It is also very important for you to know what is included in the offers, because sometimes, even because we are always wanting, even if they are not provided at the beginning, we are always wanting the promoters to provide these offers on later stage. And in some cases, we have when we have a breakdown of an offer, it turns out that two suppliers which are listed in different budget lines, in the breakdown they have some activities that are overlapping. So this is something which is also important for you to be encountered at the beginning and not on the later stage. Of course, it's not obligatory to have management and publicity cost in the project budget. It's up to you to organize it. We are not looking less carefully or with less attention on the projects that do not have management costs, because it's a normal thing that the company could, if it is a large company, for example, that it could ensure this cost from different sources or its own sources. Also, some practical advice is avoid including several persons in the project management activities. We usually like to see one person, project manager, to perform these activities. So also a question that we usually have, it's construction activities. We do not like to have, and it's not the objective of the program to have a project that is including only construction activity, but it could be like a supporting activity. For example, when you have a new installation which is requiring some additional construction works on the floor, for example, of the production facility, then it's fully understandable and could be approved. This cost should be have the grant rate of the investment costs. They should be included usually in the regional aid. Do not include, this is something which we have in several projects, do not include budget costs that are 100% covered by the promoter, because this could, we can understand that you are trying to push down the overall grant rate of the project proposal and make it eligible because you have a certain threshold for eligibility of the contribution from the side of the promoter. So don't include such costs, and also do not include costs that are not eligible and could not be supported by some of our by some of the eligible state aid regimes. We can also see then in some cases this kind of costs could be described in the additional documents, and we would take them like in our estimations when we are doing the forecast and some calculations on the profitability of the project, but they should not be included here in the budget because they're not part of the financial framework which we are going eventually to support. I will show you also in the budget where those costs could be shown in a way. So the next page of the tiled budget, this is the balance sheet. Probably this is the easiest part to be filled. This is only the historical data that you have from your balance sheets from the last 4 years. In this case, some very technical advices to you for these sections. In the upper corner, in the left corner, you see some exchange rates for different countries. You are expected to fill the figures in only in euro, but applying these exchange rates. So what we would like to see, the figures that are in your official formally submitted documents to the authorities in the local currency, and to be by using the shown exchange rate to transfer them to euro. We are expecting you to fill whole figures. Pay attention that usually your balance sheets and financial statements are in thousands. But we would like to see them in the full figures. Do not use decimals also when you're filling the figures. For the codes that are currently open, and years is 2019, but of course it is something very a common practice from Innovation Norway that we would like to see also your current financial performance. So for those projects that are shortlisted, you will be most probably requested to provide also financial data for 2020 at some point of the evaluation process, just to know what is your performance. And of course, don't be worried about that, because we're working with a lot of companies and we know that this year was hard for everybody. This is something which is very relevant for all the pages in the detailed budgets, that they should be relevant to the official documents that you have submitted to the national authorities. Some other technical things in the Excel file. When we are talking for the balance, we have this small table which is showing the how the figures should be combined in this form. You can have you have also this information in the guideline that I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. So there you can it is very well shown how you should, from where you should take the figures from the national statistical forms and then to import them here. But also for those that are doing the accountancy, those categories that are mentioned in the balance sheet and also in the profit and loss sheet, they are very much following the international accounting standards. So if your company is preparing such a annual reports under the international accounting standards, you can also use them almost directly. So here, this table above is will be calculated automatically in the line paid in capital. Just small observation on that. And at the end, there is a check because we would like to have entities also standard accountancy rule that the total assets should be equal to the total equity and liability. So this is just a check which we would also help you. So if it is they're not the figures are not equal, then you have this message that they are different. Otherwise, you'll get OK. This is like a small check also for you. Then we're moving to the third page of the budget, which is showing we are kind of entering to the interesting part, which is the forecast. First, one observation, because we had some questions in this respect, the implementation period for the purpose of this simulation and forecast, we are kind of taking us that it is only 1 year or 1 unit in this forecast methodology, but otherwise the project of course could be more than 1 year, year and a half or 2 years, but still it will be counted in one period, which is implementation in this table. Also pay attention that here in this profit and loss table with the forecast, we would like to see your forecasts without the grant. You're assuming that you're not going to receive the grant. Basically, it would be most probably visible in terms of financial expenses, because you should envisage higher loan if you're going to take loan to implement the project, and the expenses would be higher in this respect. Also take in mind what we would like to see is in the forecast is that how the company will do without having the operations which are related to the project, plus the operation of the results from the project. So basically you can have a growing company without the project, or you can have operations which are stable and the profit of the incomes from the project could be added to that. Of course, you can have other activities which are kind of decreasing in the future, but we are counting more and more on what is coming out from the project. So this is the idea how you should prepare those figures. And remember, here we would like to see the figures for the whole company, not only from the other activities, because this will give us idea, and also to you when we would like to see the realistic picture, what is the share of the project in the portfolio of the company, because we have large companies where the project is very small share of the whole activities, and we have small companies where the project is really a big share of those activities. Here we have also this note that the forecast should correspond to the next 2 pages in the budget, which are cash flow and project cost and revenues. Because, for example, here we would not like to see some inconsistency. For example, cash flow for the projects to be higher than the revenues that you expect for the whole company, which would be very strange, because usually it's the revenues from the project added to the revenues of the company, which it would have otherwise without the project. Cash flow, this is the next page in the budget. So this is the cash flow that on this page, on this table, we would like to see the cash flow related with the project finance and the budget associated with the project implementation together with the taxes and loans. And we have another table which is without the taxes, without the loans, because there we have a kind of cleared cash flow. Here we have everything. In this table, we would like to see whether you're going to receive a loan to implement the project, what will be the interest rates. Also here there are two boxes. I have one of them is green, the other one is blue. F4 and F5. This is in these boxes you should mention the taxes, the VAT or the profit tax, because we would like to have also the net figures of this the project cash flow. Some parts of this table are automatically generated from the other page. For example, the real the direct revenues that are in costs that are associated with the implementation of the project. For example, the costs that are related with materials that are both for the production or the other consumables that are used, and also the price that are paid for the products that are that are produced thanks to the project. So this is how the Excel table looks like in this respect. So here you have shareholders' contribution. So in this first line, which is in blue, that is total figure, total cash inflow. This is where you should show us, and it should correspond also to the other documents for the business plan and the application. Here you should show us where the money will come from, whether it would be the shareholders' contribution or loan. And here, actually, this amount would be higher than the amount of the project budget, because here we would like to see the amounts with VAT on the first place. And of course, here you can include some other expenses which are not due to some reason are not eligible to be covered by the program, but are still related to the project implementation and important. You can include them, those costs here. So these figures, from a practical point of view, they should be equal. So line total cash inflow and total cash outflow, they should be equal to each other, but also they can be, and they should be higher than the total budget of the project, because they include first VAT, and they could include also some other costs that are not eligible to be included in the project budget. Usually those costs, we have locked the other cells here during the operation, because usually those costs are made during the implementation and they are related to the project. Here you should include the whole amount of the project. So imagine that you're not going to get the grant, and you should fill those figures here in their full. I mean, not subtracting in a way the grant that you're expecting, but still the grant could be in a way shown in this other two these lines down, which are showing the loans and the principal of the loans that could be taken, and also the interest payments. In one case, this is with about the project co-financing. So basically, if you're going to take a loan and you're going to use it for covering the part which is not covered by the grant, which is the co-financing, then you should include those figures here. But if you're going to take the loan for the whole amount and also for the grant, then you should include also figures here. Of course, it is pretty much normal that you can leave those lines empty if you're not going to take loan. So it's absolutely normal to have those lines empty. We are not expecting to have you to have loans in all the cases. Sometimes, and companies are financing the project by themselves, by their own resources that were accumulated. Now we are going to probably the most important part, which is the cost and revenues, which is related with the with your forecasts about the profits from the project. It was mentioned several times that the main purpose and objective of the course is to increase the profitability of the company. So basically, revenues and profitability. And previously, we had many three sentences saying that the project will contribute for, let's say, 10% profitability of the company. But when you should make this profitability in a breakdown and count the numbers of the products that you are going to sell and also based on their price, then it's coming something else. So here we have these lines where you should fill first product and services. Here you can write the name of the product and pay attention that it is going automatically on the next page, which is for the costs. It will have the same name, so they are related, and you should mention the units that you're going to sell and also what is the expected price. Of course, you should include the price with VAT, because those figures are transferred to the previous table, which is showing the cash flow with VAT. So here you should mention the price with VAT. You can have different trends of entering the market. For example, you can have a very high number of products sold at the beginning, which is decreasing through the period. But mostly the companies are the projections of the companies are with less numbers at the beginning and then more at the end. It is also up to you to decide. Of course, we will review that, but whether to use the same price during the whole period of 5 years, or you can, for example, usually this price could be changed due to depending on the competition, whether to decrease or to increase it. It's up to you. Also,
Colin,
yeah.
Very quickly, you're running out of time, so if you're able to, if you're able to round off in 2 minutes, that'd be great.
Okay.
Sorry, you're on mute again. Sorry. There we are.
Yeah, thanks. I'll do that in 2 minutes. So we have other revenues, which are associated with the implementation of the project, but they are not the main revenues from the project. They are not the objective of the project. So basically, it is normal that they should be less than the profits that you have from the project, from the actual implementation of the project. The next slide is showing the costs that are that should be mentioned in this forecast. So basically, under the cost for each of the product, you should include the cost for the materials that are used for the production of the products, like raw materials. In the rows below, you can include also the cost for water, for energy that are used for the production. Here you can use both let's say, monthly invoice and make it for an annual, or you can have other approach depending on whether there is difference through the calendar year and make only the annual calculations. So it's up to you to define how to reach the annual figures for this cost. Also some other costs which could not be classified in these categories for raw materials or for these utilities. These are some certificates that you're paying for, or for environmental purposes or other permissions that you have to pay. It depends. It's always different. Also, something which is important here for this costs, it could be possible that in case you're introducing a new service or the product of the project is a service, not an actual product, then you can have unitary costs 0, because those would be shown in the salaries, which is the first 2 lines, or in the utilities that you're paying. There are 2 other tables in this final page of the detailed budget. One of them is showing the depreciation and amortization. In the guideline, you have the rates which should be applied for the depreciation. Please pay attention that only investment costs could be subject to depreciation and amortization. You should not apply amortization, for example, to the salary costs, this means not to the whole amount of the project budget. And the rates are following the national legislation in the respective country. So even without looking at the guideline, you should know, the accountant of your company should know what are the rates for depreciation. There are 2 main, also this table for changes in working capital, the implementation and operation. For implementation, we have this period which is with 1, and the others are with for operation. In the guideline, you will see that at the end you should have internal rate of return which is equal or above the discount rate. We are usually for the forecast, we are usually applying a discount rate of 6%, so the internal rate of return should be 6 or more percentage, and also the net present value, it should be a positive value at the end when you're making the calculation for your forecast. But you can leave those calculations to us, and let's say like that, if you reach internal rate of return above 6 and positive net present value, it doesn't mean that you'll be evaluated with maximum points, because we are having also different criteria which we are combining to make those calculations. This is just like a starting point for your forecast, how to organize them. This is some of our recommendations, so to make really good linkage with the other documents, and to check the figures when it is about the historical data with the official documents of the company, and of course be realistic in your projection for the cash flows when you're making the forecasts. Thank you, and sorry for taking a bit more time.
Thank you very much, Colin. Let me see here. I hope it was good for everyone listening. We won't have time to have a Q&A with Colin, but if you do submit your questions, we'll try to get back to them in writing. And now I think, Frauke, you are ready to round off, are you?
Yes, thank you. And thanks so much to Colin, who admittedly had the most difficult and demanding topic here. So I think a double thanks to you. And as already Henrik stated, we will really care to reply to the FAQs. It might take a couple of days, but you will get an answer if we have the sufficient basis of information to do that. Sometimes we lack a little bit the context in the FAQs that we have in the questions that we have received. Also, thanks to all of you who have stayed tuned for now over 3 hours. I know that this is a bit of an ordeal, but as we already said, you wouldn't need to attend all of it in one go, but you can still look at the record on our YouTube channel. So, and all of you who have now participated, who have registered for this event, you will receive a link to this YouTube channel and the presentation. And if I have understood correctly, the PDF files are also very popular. So the presentations as PDF, and we will also find a way to make them available. But please, we ask for your understanding that they will not be available for a year or so, but only for a couple of days, because we would also like to improve our PDFs, and then we wouldn't like to leave them for a period longer than we really need it until the next improvement is made. So, and then they are outdated. So that's why we would only leave them for a couple of days available. Together with our presentation and our record on YouTube, we will also send you some feedback survey. And I have mentioned to you, this is the first time we do such a detailed webinar for applicants who are sort of in the middle of things. And we are perfectly aware that this was not ideal yet. We saw many questions popping up, and we would like you to ask for suggestions for feedback, how we can make such a webinar even better for you, more transparent, more user-friendly, without necessarily prolonging the slots even further. So all the feedback will be very welcome from you. Yes, and of course, the calls, more calls are coming up, both in Greece and in the other countries, because we still have money left to disperse. So if you can't submit your presentation this call, you will most likely have another opportunity coming up in a couple of months. Good. Thank you for now. I would like to especially thank to all presenters, to all speakers / specialists from the EEA and Norway grants who have contributed to this event today. I think it was quite a successful event. We have learned a lot. I hope that you did as well. Good. Thanks for now, and good luck with your applications. Bye.